Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents She's Got Soul by Aja, narrated by Shari, Peele, and Leon Nixon.
Prelude. Dear Journal, we are no closer to finding the love of our life, not even a half of a step. In fact, at this moment, as I type this entry to you, I sit in a well-lit spot in a little coffee shop around the corner from us being me and my heart. Even with the lighting and the frequent traffic from fine-ass men who love coffee-flavored caffeine, I still sit here alone. I know you're wondering whether I've actually approached one of them or, at the very least, smiled his way. The answer would be no. That would just be trying to get a man too far. But shit, can't they see, in all my gorgeousness, that I'm glowing? I mean, more like shining now since these lights are so damn hot. And isn't that enough for them to approach me? Danny told me I needed to get out more. Hence me coming here instead of drinking coffee inside my home or while I work, which is perfectly fine for me. But here I am, out, not one approach. I am beginning to wonder if I miscalculated my need to have a significant other in my life, with really just a need for a significant penis, because the last time I had a boyfriend, it proved I didn't do well with him. Him being the whole person, not the penis. Penis I do just fine with. I mean, the beginning is always beautiful. That's how they get you. Saying all the things you want to hear, and you are barely hearing the words anyway because you're just so happy to be close to that body heat for once, and it does get cold in Pittsburgh. And if he smells good, you might as well forget it. But when a few discernible words make it past his sparkling white teeth, they are what you want to hear. You're different. I like that. Not like the rest. So brilliant, sexy. We should get with each other. Let's go to my place. All those words were perfect, so I spread my legs, and then my heart. But what did different mean when 3 months in I get treated like the rest? Excuses that looked awfully close to lies. Inconsistency, smiles that don't reach his eyes, more text messages and less calls. Then the penis becomes scarcer. And from what I know about that little, or hopefully big, penis, is he likes to get his action every day, if possible. So if I'm not getting it, someone else is, and someone else is the one who is different right now. That was my story with men. So truly, I shouldn't be sitting here hoping for a repeat, right? This is the only bad thing about talking to my journal friend of mine. You have no goddamn answers. I mean, I'm spilling my guts here and telling you things no one need to really know. I mean, last week, I shared something you can't tell a soul. You shouldn't have even backed up that entry on the cloud. Nope. But I share, and you sit there blinking at me when I ask you a question. Fine. I won't get answers from you, and I need to head back home anyway to do some real work. Trolling has been fruitless. Zola Green. Chapter 1. A month or so later. Zola. Auntie Zola, you need a man in your life. Zoe, first of all, no woman needs a man in her life, except for her father. Where did you get that from? Never mind. You got that from my sister, your mother. Second of all, you're too young to give me advice on men. You shouldn't even have experience yet. Her response came in the form of a mischievous smile that clearly meant she had enough experience for me to probe her later about her experiences. Later, as in when her mom wasn't around. Aunties took extra care to keep secrets unless they were the type of secrets that needed outing. I couldn't be sure of that until I uncovered the reason for the smirk. But that would have to wait because we were surrounded. It was Sunday, and also July's new moon. Though my mother eschewed most traditions that other families seemed to wear as a banner of pride, the new moon was one she followed to a T. As the first phase of the moon cycle, the new moon phase holds special meaning for cultures around the world, and specifically my mother. It is often viewed as a symbol of new beginnings. From her point of view, this phase provided a reset where goals are renewed, desires are set, and new intentions are made. And so we gathered together no matter what day the new moon fell on. And we spoke our intentions, let go of grudges, and allowed our hearts to open. Though I didn't believe we always did let go, it was a nice tradition that I didn't try to get out of attending. The new moon always represented a time of peace that emanated from my mother and into us, and I loved it. But my 15-year-old niece would not be handing out advice to me this Sunday or any other day, but she wasn't so convinced. Her naturally and perfectly arched eyebrows furrowed, and she took up a more comfortable position beside me on my mother's purple velvet couch. She was giving me her full, undivided attention. Her light brown eyes sparkled as she went on without regard to my obvious discomfort. "You say that, Auntie, but you are lonely. I can see it in your eyes, and I can feel it in my heart. You aren't seeing or feeling anything but youth, Zoe. You and I both know we all feel things in this family, and we know things. Now stop diverting." Zoe was into going to the library like her mother and I used to do at her age, and as a result, she used words not typical for children or teenagers her age. She was also right about how clairvoyant and empathic we were in my family. But that wasn't something I wanted to explore. From my position, I knew what I wanted or needed, and I didn't want or need a man, even if the idea of a man loving me for exactly who I am was appealing. I looked over at my mother, who seemed to be intentionally keeping her eyes diverted and into her Zadie Smith's Feel Free collection of essays. Her dark brown locks hung like ropes around her face, making it easy for her to disappear from this conversation. I wasn't even sure why I would have looked to her for assistance, though. She was more against relationships than I pretended to be. "So you're saying you plan to remain single for the rest of your life?" Zena walked into the living room and decided to help Zoe with the inquisition. Not that she had any right. She hadn't openly dated in years. I say openly because I imagine she had the same enthusiasm for sex as I, and our mother did. Zora was against relationships, but not sex, and Zena and I knew that if our mother was in a good mood, it was because she'd been getting some loving between the sheets. Though the who is a mystery. We were passionate women who mostly did not see the necessity in keeping the man around for more than stimulating conversation and great love-making. "No, that's not what I'm saying, though it would make things so much easier." "Of course it will. That way you can complain about men every Thursday night on Soul Talk." "Hush, Zena." "You know I'm not lying." "No one asked you." "Oh, but you did. Your question earlier tonight was, do you think I'm too hard on them? Nem, as in men. And my answer was, hell yeah, you are. You countered with how you intended to give them a piece of your mind, which led me to ask whether you plan to remain single until the end of eternity. Let me ask you, sister, do you plan to ever get married again? My question was met with her silence and the glare in her big brown eyes that tilted in the corners. Eyes identical to mine and her daughter Zoe's. The eyes we got from our mother. Zoe, who had watched the exchange, chose to pull out her phone and do what teenagers do. Get on Snapchat. That was low, Zola, and the answer is no. Zena immediately looked away so that I couldn't read her true feelings, something I had a supernatural gift for doing. It may have also been to avoid biting back at me in our mother's presence. In our family, we were supposed to be able to speak our thoughts and feelings without rebuke or consequence. Our mother, Zora, encouraged our free speech, and never were we scolded for saying exactly what we thought about things. This, however, didn't bode too well in school, where the entire construct was designed to make children assimilate and be compliant, which is why Zena and I were often called into the office, followed by our mother. Mom would sit there patiently listening to whatever antics we got into that day. When the principal or teacher was finished, she would calmly explain that she raised us to speak our minds, and that while she understood that didn't always work well in places that ran on assimilation, she would not change her way of rearing us. If the school didn't like it, she would pull us out to homeschool us. Immediately, they would backtrack, because both Zena and I were the smartest in our classes. They would bring up the test scores. Everyone who knows anything about schools knows that we were being trained to take tests, which is why my mother taught us her own curriculum each afternoon for an hour. You need to know their ways and know ours. After Zena and I came home from school, we were allowed to grab our snacks and head into the dining room area, which was more like an atrium. The atrium was filled with bright sunlight filtered through large windows and shining directly onto the banana and Dieffenbachia plants my mother strategically placed where they could grab the light. We'd sit there doing our homework while our mother finished up her clients' clothes. Mom was a seamstress by trade, but also had a side hustle reading tarot cards. Neither of those things would pay all the bills, so she'd take temporary positions that would help fill in the gaps of our pretty simple life. But life with Zora was anything but simple. My mother was what most adults would categorize as odd or eccentric. She had stone crystals around the house and wore them as well, mostly amethyst, to promote healing. She'd long ago given up wearing rose quartz for love. She said the stone she wore must have been fake since it led her to our father, which is why she needed the amethyst. It was the only bad thing she ever said about him. She burned sage ritually and played African tribal music, almost as much as she played Bob Marley. She wore locks before they were popular and had a habit of first cutting them off and then allowing them to grow back down to her shoulders, because she would say, "Hair is just hair. It can grow back." She wasn't attached to anything, which could be seen as a great thing until you felt like she wasn't attached to you. As girls, Zena and I would sometimes joke about who our mother would put up for adoption first. The joke would be met with our girlish laughter, but after the giggles subsided, what was left was an internal foreboding feeling that we hesitated to speak about for fear that we'd speak it into existence, saying that manifestation was also a belief our mother held and taught us. The fear was a nagging one because it was entirely possible that Zora Green was not our last name. We had our father's name, but regardless of what last name we had, our fear was that it was possible she'd let us go. How was it that two girls who otherwise seemed happy, balanced, and well taken care of believed they were one mood shift away from adoption, or worse, foster care? It was simple. Our mother was unconventional, and for years extremely unhappy. Her moods could sometimes go dark and smoldering. She would retreat into a place that neither of us could figure out. She'd play music, the depressing kind. A lot of Billie Holiday and Phyllis Hyman, too. She'd play their albums for hours and would smoke reefer, too, and we knew better than to intrude upon her practices. We would find things to occupy ourselves. With 5 years between us, it was often Zena, the oldest of us, that would be responsible for making sure whatever we got into would allow us to come home safely and not land us on a milk carton. That was where our love for the library began. The library was 3 blocks from our 2-bedroom apartment, and it was safe. Zena and I would retreat to the teen section. I should have remained in the children's section because I was 9. But the teenagers' relationships in the Babysitter's Club and Judy Blume books Zena told me about fascinated me. On our way home, Zena and I would discuss our opinions on love and heartache. Zena went through crushes the way I now go through earbuds. In case you're wondering, that's often because those plastic coverings always get lost and never turn up again. Anyway, her relationships with boys were more idealistic than she wanted to admit. Maybe romance novels were to blame for that. After the teen novels came romance novels, and she's been stuck on them ever since. Her romantic notions didn't stop with her own love life. Zena longed for our father to come back. She thought if only he and our mother talked, they would figure out what went wrong and get back together with some sort of cued music that elicited magic in the background. I, though fascinated with teen romances, was more into sci-fi. Stephen King's constant depiction of the world having monsters in it fell more in line with my cynicism. So, from my vantage point, there was no way Daddy was coming back. Who knew if he or Mother was the monster? But according to Stephen King's methodology, it was one of them. Zena's belief in fairy tales and happy endings led her to Ross Davenport. Light, bright, almost white, hazel-eyed, debonair, and charming. He was Zena's dream come true until she found out 10 years into their marriage that he was the dream come true to a lot of women. Zoe had 6 siblings through her father, and Ross wasn't taking care of any of them but Zoe. When one of the mothers took him to court for child support, the secret was out of the hat, along with all the other babies and baby mamas. It nearly killed my sister, and for months she and Zoe lived with me in my 2-bedroom loft-style apartment so that my sister could tend to her wounds and Zoe not be alone while she did it. Though Zena acted like her heart had hardened, I suspected she wanted to open it up again to someone new, the romantic in her never dying. Me, on the other hand, believed that aliens invading my body was more likely than a man having that much time and contact with me. Some said I ran my mouth too much. Others were more precise. It wasn't that I ran it too much, Dino said. It's just that you are too opinionated, and when you get on one of your kicks, you don't stop until you convince everyone. After a while, I gave up on the idea that I could be matched with someone who wanted to hear my ideas as much as I wanted to share them. So that was that. In place of men, I have my podcast, and I have a position at work where I blurt out ideas and opinions all day and get paid for it.
Chapter 2. Khalil. My wrist vibrated as it swung at my side as I began my warm-up on the treadmill, but I didn't lift my arm to look at my watch for whatever missive just came through. My feet tapped on the rubber track to the beats of Afro-Caribbean sounds, and I tried to clear my mind of the impending fire that would greet me when I made it to the office. Ginger only called or texted this time of morning if there was a problem, and not just any problem, but the type that required me to be involved. I had 2,000 employees who reported to me, with at least 200 managers and mid-level supervisors. The cushion between problems and myself was thick. Although I showed up to the office at 9 sharp Monday through Friday, with the exception of conferences and the occasional vacation, my duties were more peripheral. I motivated my teams to put their best foot forward by being there, but my hands were hardly in the proverbial pot. I admit there were times I missed it. I missed it enough to be tempted to end my workout early and hurry to the office to assist, but exercising was one of the things that kept me balanced. What good would I be to anyone if I didn't have balance? So I finished my cruising pace before I moved into a full-on sprint, reaching 8 miles an hour. Exercising for me was essential to my health, but at one time, I exercised and lifted weights strictly to transform myself into someone different. After my parents were killed in that car accident, I went through a period of time where I was eating all the food my grandmother placed in front of me to comfort me, always going back for seconds and thirds, and I was a bit chubby. Combining that with my book nerd ways, I got teased a little, though it wasn't near the level of bullying kids seem to experience today. No, I just didn't have any girls smiling at me. It wasn't until I noticed the weights in the basement at one of my friends' houses that I started lifting, and then began starting to eat better. My looks transformed. Even about 20 years later, I maintained those same habits. Pictures and photo albums left by my grandmother, a reminder of who I used to be. The gym had also proved to be a great place to observe people and to clear my thoughts, both of which helped me to be an effective leader. Just as I was about to head to the weights, Marlon called. "Hey, man, what you up to?" "I'm all good, man. I'll be through about 6 if that's okay." Yeah, you know I got you, but that ain't why I called." Weights completely forgotten, I sat down on a free bench to settle in for the drama. Marlon's been my barber for almost 20 years, which means by now we are family, though Marlon already had a large family of his own. He had 5 children, 4 of them girls by 3 different baby mamas. Not to mention that a few of those mothers already had children that attached themselves to him when he was briefly around. I always joked that he needed to purchase a compound to move everyone in so he could deal with them all. His response was always, "You the millionaire, you buy me the compound." I never touched that. He could continue to use his weed habit to help him cope. It was safe, and he could afford it. But I wasn't a bank. Yes, I was a multimillionaire that still went to get a shape-up in the neighborhood where I grew up. I have 5 cars, but I would often be seen driving my 2019 BMW 750. It was my favorite because it was unassuming, and I knew I could move through a variety of situations and not draw too much attention. If not that one, I had a Jeep I liked to pull out. Like some people collect watches, I was a car man. During work hours and special occasions, I had a driver, but when I wanted the freedom to move around, I drove myself, much to Ginger's dismay because, according to her, I was a target. In all my years, I never felt threatened by my own people. My fear of getting pulled over by the police was stronger. Marlon had about 10 years on me and was always protective. Sitting in his chair all these years taught me a lot about what not to do when it came to women. More than that, his anecdotes were about everything from how to eat healthy to perform best in bed to just typical shit-talking, which he seemed to be an expert. Saturday mornings was where me and at least 50 other young men went to the Church of Marlon to be educated on the ways of the world. We became disciples to him, and while I knew better than to do all the shit he preached, some of the information took me places that enriched my life. Like the time he told us to get a passport as soon as possible so that we would never be restricted in our travels. Seeing the world was paramount to understanding just how oppressed we are in the country that claimed to be free. Marlon gave this advice, while he rarely traveled. Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Cancun seemed to have been the only locations he and many other black folks ever stepped foot in outside of the United States, but "I can go wherever I want to go, if I wanna," is what he would say. For so many, the barbershop was the cornerstone of black men's lives. It was and is the only place where we can be ourselves and outsiders were looked at skeptically. Too many secrets were shared in the barbershop, too much gossip. The international black man's handshake and chest bump were passed around like a joint in there. No outsider could have that access. Marlon used the platform to make us laugh, make us think, and then send us home with a dope cut that would get talked about all week while it was still fresh. His cuts were the reason I was starting to get noticed. My braces and glasses were becoming a non-factor. "So what's up? You still have internship spots at your company?" "I'm not sure. I need to check with Ginger to see where we are in the process." "I understand. But if you still have a spot open, let me know." Little Marlon told me he finally decided he wants to be a coder, and I was like, "Oh shit, my son's gonna be rich like Khalil." Chuckling, I told him, "Have him email me a letter explaining why he wants to intern at KIB, and I'll have my team review it." Most internships were for college students, but many software developers only had a high school diploma along with some certifications they grabbed along the way, which is why my company allowed high school graduates to intern and potentially stay on in the 2 available slots. Their performance had to be spectacular to beat out the other 23 interns. There were no handouts, and Marlon Jr. would not be shown any favoritism once he was in the program, but for now, I would just see to it that he got a shot. That was the least I could do for Marlon. "Thanks, man. I'll see you later for your cut." I hung up and looked at the time. It was 8:45. Not enough time to get the weights in, so I got up and headed for the shower. Looking to my left, I saw Sandra, who had been trying to get my attention for over a month now, though I was not seeing any results of all the hours she put in when she came here. However, all I'd ever seen Sandra dedicate her time to was scoping out men. While I don't care whether you're a size 2 or a size 24, like Sandra appeared to be, It seems like a waste of time and resources to pay for a gym membership just to get a man. Though my childhood friend Q would disagree. Q, short for Quincy, specifically opened up gym memberships to get with women, and notice I said memberships because from time to time he needed to move around until things blew over at the different location he frequented. Q wasn't known for making relationships work past the time it took to learn sex was the only thing he had in common with her. But I couldn't be hard on Q. He was like a brother to me, and after a life in the streets that landed him in the county more than a handful of times, he was finally getting himself together. If women helped him stay off the streets, so be it. But he has made it clear he could never settle down with one. I've done too much to ever fully trust any of these broads. I took my shower and changed into the navy blue Italian suit I brought with me, my smooth cognac leather shoes, and headed to the black Lexus waiting at the curb for me. My 6'5" driver/security detail stood beside the car as I approached. To the office, Mr. Barry? Yes, Jeff. How's it going, man? All right. It would be better if the Pirates won against the Milwaukee Brewers today. Laughing, I settled in for the ride and waited for him to get behind the wheel and pull off. Jeff had been my driver for 5 years now. He had a wife, 4 children, and 3 jobs, 2 of which he worked evenings and weekends as a landscaper and as security at a few nightclubs when he interviewed for this job. The man should be dead on his feet and too tired to watch sports, but he never missed a beat, often asking if I minded hearing the games played over the radio. I'll be leaving out the office early today to beat traffic. Have to get to the barbershop. I'll get you there on time, Mr. Barry. Khalil. I won't ever cross that boundary, Mr. Barry. You already have me breaking rules listening to the games all year long. There were a lot of rules I allowed him to break, strictly because I saw employees as people with lives that required creativity. Corners sometimes needed to be cut in order for things to go smoothly. I didn't employ robots. They had lives, families, responsibilities, and sometimes heavy issues they were grappling with. As long as they gave me their best, I was cool with some of the provisions that needed to be made. Okay, I'll give in for now, but one day you'll loosen up. He said nothing and instead smiled before concentrating intensely on the traffic. While he drove, I thought about how Jeff had what seemed like the simple life, but at home he had all the riches in the world. He had a wife and a tribe of children to spend time with. They were waiting for him to get home every day. When I arrived at my condo, it was quiet. There was no one waiting for me to get home, so I worked instead. Chapter 3. Khalil. 20 minutes later, we were pulling up to the 45-floor shimmering glass complex of Lakeshore Towers that housed KIB Enterprises, along with a few other smaller technology-based companies. After passing the brown-skinned and burly Roger at the security desk, I took the elevator to the top floor and walked into my life's work. When I was growing up, I couldn't have imagined this for myself. Advanced technology, apps on smartphones, and social media to connect us with strangers every moment of the day was something out of futuristic science fiction movies and novels, not part of the present, though the signs were always there it was coming. Mr. Davis, who taught computer science and the only black male teacher at my high school, encouraged me to enter into a robotics program after school, and it was there that I became interested in information science. I cared less about the actual robot, but more about what drove the movement of the robot. What were the programs that fueled it is what led to my fascination with computer science. While at MIT, I developed more than a dozen licensing software apps. I also learned how to run a business as well. When I graduated summa cum laude, I'd already secured more than a handful of job offers to work for companies that were already transforming the world with app-based technology, and a few on the brink of doing so. Working for them when I had my own brainchild wasn't the route I planned to take. I decided to secure investors in the products I had already designed and was able to start up with a small 2-story building with 3 employees. Ginger was one. She was retired from her job as a secretary at a steel-making company. But when her husband grew ill and was put on disability, she needed a job that would help fill in the gap. At her interview, I asked her how much she needed to make it work, and I hired her at her desired salary. At the time, I had no idea where we'd end up. but I knew that I'd be able to afford her and the app developers I hired. 5 years later, we moved into this property. My company occupied the top 3 floors. I didn't sit back and let my employees do all the hard work.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?